Mike.
And that's Toya.
And this is Tech Beats and Bytes.
We're trying to get we sharing from a different platform.
Right. As I try to post on Facebook.
This ain't what we used to.
You gotta be multidimensional here.
Exactly. Lot going on.
Can't even find the story. So, everybody, welcome to the show. We have some amazing women. I guess we are continuing to celebrate Women's History Month.
Absolutely.
Don't stop. Going to discuss some great things about the art world, tourism. That's about it, right?
Oh, it's a lot
Culture.
more. But we'll start there.
I feel like I'm about to get schooled today.
Get that schooling.
Y'all should have started earlier behind the scenes.
You're like,
Me too.
that's about it. And it's like 1.1 billion. Reasons why.
It's a lot of zeros. If you ladies could please, in 2 minutes, just introduce yourself and briefly tell us about your business. And you don't have to tell us a lot because we covered that in the conversation. So 2-minute intro.
Yeah, real quick.
I can do it even less.
You want to start?
Okay. My name's Ashlee Thomas. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm one of the co-founders of Muse. That's the Miami Urban Contemporary Experience, aka Muse 305. We are an arts production company. We work a lot with governments, community development corporations, universities to bring art and culture from our heritage neighborhoods like Liberty City, Opelika, Overtown, Little Havana, Alapata into those spaces. We also do cultural programming and festivals. And so all arts and culture and all that beautiful stuff.
Nice.
Awesome. I'm Stephanie Jones, and thank you for having me. I am the president of CHAT, which stands for the Cultural Heritage Alliance for Tourism. And we provide cultural heritage bus and walking tours of Miami's heritage neighborhoods, such as Little Havana, Little Haiti, historic Overtown, West Coconut Grove. And we're going to be launching some tours in the Fort Lauderdale area this summer. Yeah, we're going to be doing
expansion.
And I'll tell you a little bit about that. Yeah.
Okay.
So, let's get right into it.
Dive in. Go.
Black as a destination. They say the ghetto is just the area that hasn't been gentrified yet.
So you jump right into it.
Yeah.
This is what the show is about.
Right.
It
wasn't easy.
Questions ahead of time.
We don't give questions ahead of time.
It's just like we're on the spot.
Yeah,
right
don't
now.
nobody get to prepare
I
for
like
this.
It's real organic.
And to me, art is one of the last ghettos, if you look at it that way, especially black art. How do you ladies feel about that?
Wow.
You feel uncomfortable now. The rest of the show is just easy.
Oh, no, I'm not uncomfortable at all. Actually, I love this topic. And so much. It's one of the topics we're going to be covering at our summit in May. We're talking about gentrification, community development, and tourism. And since we do a lot of walking tours in neighborhoods that are currently being gentrified, like Overtown, Little Haiti, and even a historic Sistrunk area in Fort Lauderdale, we're actually physically seeing the transformation and the evolution of these neighborhoods. We're interacting with the small businesses and the residents who are going to be impacted or who are currently being impacted. And I guess when people talk about gentrification, it depends on, I guess, who you're asking. Either there's, a positive response or a negative response.
Right.
But I think what's most important for those who are doing a gentrifying, which are the developers who are buying a property and redeveloping these neighborhoods, is that there is inclusion. And, of the small businesses and the residents, and that they are a part of the process and not being displaced as a result of the evolution and the transformation of these neighborhoods. And what I've seen so far, and what I've been privy to in having the opportunity to attend different community meetings that are led by a lot of the developers, many of them are really making efforts to include the community in the process. And even, inviting small businesses to come in and be a part of it, creating business opportunities and job opportunities for the locals. So I'm excited about it. I know, again, a lot of people, when they say gentrification, I think a lot of it is because people really don't understand what it's all about. And because I think in the past there's been a lot of experiences where it has really been all about displacing black folks and replacing them, with other communities of people, who can afford to live in the new high rises or afford to eat at the new 5-star restaurants that are now being built in these communities. So I am hoping, and I'm very hopeful, that as Overtown evolves, Little Haiti evolves, these communities evolve, that the local people, the residents and the small businesses will evolve with them. And with that also comes personal responsibility and engagement of the people who live in these communities, to not just sit back and let people come in and take over, but to go to the meetings and have a voice and be represented, so that people know that you're not just going to come in and, you know, exclude us from something that's inevitable,
Right.
but to make sure that they stand their ground so that they can prosper and grow, you know, with the evolution of these neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
So I want to jump in right there, because my idea about gentrification, when I talk about it sometimes, it can get a little touchy.
That's okay.
I definitely think that people make it black and white, and I don't think gentrification itself is black and white. It can be poor and rich, wealthy,
Right.
wealthy, economic people. So black people can be gentrifiers. Educated, wealthy black people can be gentrifiers. Wealthy, educated Hispanic people can be gentrifiers. White people can be gentrifiers. So I think a lot of times it turns into black or white because the history in this country is, you know, economics is tied to race. So it's hard for us to remove those spaces.
So when you're saying black and white, are you talking about actual color, or are you
I'm
talking
talking
about
about
complexity?
color. I'm talking about color, because people go, oh, you know, these white hipsters are moving into the community and
A la
completely
Brooklyn.
changing, completely
Right.
changing the landscape of what this was.
Right, but somebody had to sell the land for them to get that opportunity.
And let's go backwards. I use my uncle as an example in these conversations, because he owns a lot of land in Brooklyn. He's actually buying up land in Houston, in places that are not yet developed but are well on their way, and he is an African, you know, he's Matumbo. So it's just like, what I want to say first is, like, we look at gentrification from a race space instead of a socioeconomic space. So I just want to put that out there. And then to your question about black art, I think it's just an opportunity that we've kind of not been playing that part. So I feel like black people are getting discretionary income now, after, you know, years and years of not having it. There's a discretionary income happening with an educated mass of black millennials, black professionals that want to participate in these very luxury items, that want to invest.
Getting into real estate, flipping houses.
Exactly. I want to flip houses. I want to have assets in art and stuff like that. So I feel like even when our company it transpired, we were like, you know what? There's an opportunity for us to sell art to, you know, not only to others, but to our people who have money now, and they want to learn, what is it like to invest? Where do I put this money? How do I work with it? So I think these are just burgeoning opportunities. Now, are there ramifications with gentrification that developers understand, if I hold this land and just wait for the property? That, yes, there are these business things that go with it, but get out of a race space and put it into a socioeconomic space and look at those opportunities.
So like you ladies said, I'm excited for this conversation on many different levels, and especially, you know, my ties to the Grove and everything like that. And one thing that I think is very important, especially when you're talking about gentrification and the redevelopment of neighborhoods, is the preservation of cultural assets and historical assets. So I want you to talk about that, Stephanie, especially from your perspective, because you do walking tours.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you're in these sort of smaller communities, walking tours make the most impact to those who are participating, because they can see it and take it in instead of riding by on a bus.
Absolutely. And, you know, about 50% of the people that go on our tours are local folks, people who were born and raised in Miami or who have lived in this area for so long. And they always say, you know, I didn't even know all of this history was right in my own backyard. I didn't know all of these historical sites, you know, were right here in my backyard. But to your point, one of the things, and I refer back to the summit, because everything we're talking about, we're going to be talking about on a broader stage at the summit. And for our pre-summit symposium, we're actually doing a symposium called The Heart of Heritage Neighborhoods. And we're bringing together a group of historians from Miami-Dade and Broward County, you know, Dr. Marvin Dunn and Dr. Paul George and some others, to talk about the significance of historic sites and the history of our neighborhoods. Because again, for instance, Overtown, when we do the Overtown walking tour, we always go to the oh my gosh, their Dorsey house. And, you know, we know that that house is blighted. It looks like if you blow on it hard, it will fall down. And people always say, well, why won't they preserve this property?
Right.
And I know that they have got, the Lyric Theater has gotten some funding to actually renovate it. But again, like the Ward Rooming House that's right across the street, these are all cultural jewels, you know,
Exactly.
jewels that belong to this community, not only belong to the community, but to the people who want to come and learn about the rich history when they visit this area. The students who go to school but don't have any idea about the heritage and the history of the communities that they live in, but should be exposed
Right.
to these historic sites. So preservation is really key. And I know that in communities like Little Havana, you know, there are groups that are formed specifically for the purpose of preserving the history and the historic sites of that neighborhood.
Exactly.
So again, you know, I think a lot of the responsibility has to go back to the local people in the community to say, you know, what we have, you know, even though it looks like a broken down house to you, there's a lot of history
Right.
that exists. A lot
And a
of
story.
you know, a lot of
Yeah.
stories that
Yeah.
exist in
Yeah.
a lot of these buildings, you know, people who have walked the neighborhood, people who lived in these communities, and so they must be preserved. But again, if people who live in that neighborhood and people who have kind of evolved in those communities and who really know the story are not fighting and making certain that dollars are being invested to preserve these
So hold on,
buildings.
you got to stop right there because you're crossing over two things that I
Okay.
think people get confused. The preservation of history helps with investment of wealth.
Absolutely.
But if you haven't been able to educate people the value of the wealth and the investment, they won't have as much interest in the preservation.
Right.
Can
You're
I
absolutely
speak? Can I
right
speak
about
to that?
that.
Yeah,
Because
go.
what everything you're saying. So I think one of those challenges that we're finding in these heritage neighborhoods, and you're talking about preserving. It's like the locals. We want the locals to attend these meetings, but the people who are living there, you know, the reason why it's in blight and impoverished and in spaces like that, because you have the most vulnerable there. So let's go pre-integration. Let's go to segregation. When all black people were living together, you
Yeah.
had your wealthy, you had, you know, your, you know, middle class, your working class, and then you had your vulnerable. It was a sustainable economy.
Right.
You know, so right now it's not a sustainable economy when only the vulnerable live there. Why do I care about the history of the space? You know who cares? We care.
Yeah.
You know, but we don't typically live in those neighborhoods.
But
typically,
would
Can we
someone
live in
but
those
would
spaces?
someone care if you were able to educate them on the value?
You know,
Because
I
that's
think
the
so,
part that I
yeah.
think a lot of
Right.
people are missing.
Yeah.
Because I don't care about the land if I don't know the value of the historic land.
right.
And I think sometimes we're just not educating people for them to care.
Absolutely. You're totally right.
Who was around that they say Basquiat did a lot of his style from, the artist that lived here? I can't think of his name right.
Purvis.
Purvis, yes.
Young.
So with Purvis Young, if we knew the aspects of what was going on with the Andy Warhols and we knew more about the art world, I think more people would have been interested in collecting the art of Purvis Young. But when you're not educated of what else is going around, because back then you didn't have the internet, you weren't able to just go log in and watch an auction from Sotheby's to see that these pieces were going for, at that point, $250,000, $300,000. But
Which is-
now,
yeah.
when you see a piece going for $10 million, it's like, wait, I used to walk by Purvis. I used to walk by John Michael Basquiat. I used to pass them up, and I could have bought that piece for $500. I remember when he was starving and he wanted to give it to me for $200, and now it's a $10 million piece. But we're talking about things that I think are next level. And sometimes I feel like the conversations we have, and some people that know me know this, but other people that watch the show may be like, you know, sometimes we just say, I normally say crass things because I'm trying to speak for the ones that are unspoken.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff I'm saying I already know the answer to, or I already have a totally different opinion, but that's just not what makes for a good host. The goal is to bring stuff out of people, to educate
Right.
other people. And I think sometimes when we have these conversations, we're already talking on our level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking on a level we understand, and the people we're trying to reach, they're nowhere close to the level that we're having a conversation. So when we're talking above and beyond and around them. So they get intimidated, they get scared, and I think that's what happened when we were doing STEM. That's what happened in the tech world.
Cryptocurrency.
20 years ago, that's what happened in 30 something years ago, that's what was happening in engineering. and then you had that big push for more black engineers. You had the same thing happen to lawyers. That's where the National Bar Association came from. We always have these conversations where I think sometimes we leave the layman out of it. And I don't even want to say they're vulnerable. I want to say the overlooked, because they're not being educated in a language or a way they can understand. So, no, I don't see the value in a historic house when you haven't been able to just tell me the truth. And sometimes the truth shouldn't be the thing that motivates them, but you haven't told me why this could be worth $1 million.
Yeah.
So I can't see the value when I'm starving.
Right.
And okay, so you bring so many points up right there, because you can't see the value when you're starving. So I feel like when you talk about who's having this conversation, or the talented tent that's having this conversation, there's a responsibility and a duty to those who are disseminating information, those people who actually can create jobs or create opportunities. You know, I love what you did with Chad. You created a local tour where now local people can have those spaces. We create art exhibitions where local artists who may not have had an opportunity to show at the Lowe's can now show there, you know, can exhibit in those spaces. So I think the education is happening on those ground fronts, but I think you make a really good point, because it goes like, in time, if I'm a vulnerable person and I'm thinking about hunger, I'm not thinking about that space, but there has to be a group of people who are.
Right.
But I'm not thinking about that space if I can't see the value of where the return is at.
Because I'm still
I may look at it totally
right.
I may look at it totally different if you tell me paying
break it
attention to
down.
this may have an outcome that can bring you this.
And then also how that impacts your neighborhood. And then
I mean, that's why so
that
many
can
people
do.
go to church. You go to church because
Right.
somebody has told you that blessings come with it.
Right.
If nobody told you about any blessings to church, how many people would still go to church?
But, well, if I could,
Yes.
Yeah, jump on in. Jump on in.
But it's good stuff. It is so good. And again, I smile because, I mean, you're so on point. And one of the primary reason why I started Chat is because when I was working for the CBB, and they hired me to do this program working in these heritage neighborhoods to help small businesses become tourism ready, I recognized that, you know what, yes, it's great for them to learn about how, a tourism, but if they're not actively participating in this multi-billion-dollar industry,
Exactly.
what's the point? And it's not that people don't desire to participate, because when I would flash those multi-billion-dollar numbers before them and say, who wants a piece of this? Everybody raised their hand. But the reality is, everybody don't know how to go after it.
Have no idea.
Have no idea.
And it's about choices. If it's easier for them to get a job versus
Yes.
trying to do a business,
Yes.
then they're going
Right.
to get a job because they can
Absolutely.
immediately
But
pay
I
their bills.
started Chet because I wanted to create broader opportunity and inclusion and engagement of small businesses, not just small businesses, but local folks. Show them there are opportunities to participate in this industry. And even that, because I know everybody are not good at running a business, and it is because we met
Everybody
the first
doesn't
one.
have to.
We had the first conversation, remember? And I brought you guys together. I'm like, look, I think there are some opportunities for us to do some things together. But the more I research and the more time I spend in these communities, I said, you know what? There is opportunities to really bring tourists to our neighborhoods and to draw more tourists, not just tourists, but local folks into our local businesses, so that these businesses can actively participate in tourism.
Right.
And so that's the model we've created. So whenever we do a tour, we have 4 or 6 businesses that are getting a paycheck at the end of it.
Because we ain't even have this in our notes, but that's still a piece of self-love.
Yeah.
You don't want to exploit yourself if you don't love yourself to see the value within yourself.
Yeah.
So other people come into your culture, they see the value, they take it and they run with it.
They
So
do.
you can't just teach them business. You still got to teach them on a psychological level just to love themselves.
Absolutely.
Well,
Right.
and I
Absolutely.
think if you do it through arts and culture, it's not preaching to people.
It's
It's not
not.
patronizing them, So it's like, hey, there's a show coming up. Hey, there's a pop-up here. Hey, there's a tour. Come on it. Do you want a job here? One of those moments. So our first employee that we had, I love her. She's amazing. I remember her saying, like, I didn't even know this was a job I could do, like
Right.
doing art production or putting together shows. Like, she had worked for Clorox doing social media. She had worked for like what is the PRC? These places. She had
Call centers.
Yeah, she's worked at
Right.
call centers, and I met her at a career source. So I found her like in an interview in Career Source in the city. My city girls, I love y'all. So, and she came in just talented and so sharp.
Right.
Such a great asset to the company. And she said, this is the first time I feel like every single skill that I learned from all those places makes sense and it's fun and
Nice.
it's entertainment and it's and I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this.
Yeah.
So if I can make another opportunity in arts and culture where now, we were doing like a Nina Simone and a Lena Horne, and she was like, I don't know those people. You know, and for me, I'm like, well, I can't believe that. I went to the African Heritage Culture Arts Center as a kid. Our arts and culture was Black history. We didn't know we were being taught Black history, but we learned it through arts and culture. So for her, she was also learning her culture at the same time she was doing the work, you know. So I think those are great ways to preach self-love or practice it without, you know, without preaching.
Right, and going into the business of tourism, because I think that that's important for people to understand the dollars that actually are in the industry. So if you could break it down, like what does it look like to be in the business of tourism in Miami, and especially then the subset of cultural tourism, because there's the overall South Beach movement, but then there's the subset that you're specifically targeting, and then, you know, so that way people understand like the money and the opportunity that's there.
Right. Well, I don't have the numbers in front of
It's
me,
okay.
but I can tell you that
Roundabouts.
annually, there's over, help me too. I know it's over like 15 million people. Let me get the numbers right, because I don't want to mess it up.
What's the number we're looking for? Tourism.
I can
it's
tell
the number
you,
of
like,
tourists
arts
that
and
come
culture.
to,
I don't have tourists, but I have arts and culture
Yeah.
in Miami-Dade
number
County.
of visitors to Miami.
Okay.
All I know is that they leave multi-billion dollars annually in both Fort Lauderdale and Miami. But to your point, cultural heritage tourism is the fastest growing segment of the travel industry.
Right.
And I've done extensive research, and the research says that when people travel, whether they're coming from abroad or nationally, when they travel to a destination, they will spend more time and more money because they want to have those off the beaten path experiences. They want to venture off the beach into the inner city. They want to go where they can get the best soul food, where they can listen to
Best
some
barbecue.
live jazz. Yeah, where they can hang out with the local folks and become immersed in the culture.
Why are you looking at me? I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, you are. Go ahead.
Do it.
What do we have here?
No, she know I ain't even thinking about these numbers because people need to be very careful of how they word things, because it makes almost our culture a spectacle. I understand to be admired and adored, but what you're saying is just so truthfully honest, but it's just so irritating at the same time. And it's just because it's
But
like,
aren't tourists sometimes?
I just want to see what the inner city is like. It's not a zoo.
But you
Like,
know
this
what?
is our damn life.
That's
You
not
gonna come
even
in
what
and
I'm
do some work.
saying, because personally, whenever I travel anywhere, I go on a cultural heritage tour because I want to learn the history.
You wanna see the people.
But I agree. It's just like when you go, like,
So it's
New
not
Orleans
just-
has one of the best ones. New
Exactly.
Orleans is
Right.
amazing.
So I didn't say it was only white people that are
No,
looking for these
first of all,
experiences.
I'm not saying just white. I'm saying what people are saying in general. Like, I just gotta see if it's.
No
Man, you
dipping.
better come here and spend some money. But your numbers are your numbers are 15.9 million
Okay,
people
right.
a year come to Miami.
Right.
Yeah. But so back to your point though, why do you feel that
And
developers
it dropped last year for the first time in the last 5
Oh yeah?
years.
Was that because of like hurricane? Did it say no?
Zika, probably.
It could
Zika.
have, those
I
could
was
have
gonna
been
say because of
impacted.
Trump, because
But
it's
That too.
All
People
those
just pissed.
factors
I was just
played
gonna blame it on the
played-
little orange
Yeah.
man.
But just last month, or maybe earlier this month,
Uh-huh.
Governor Scott released a press release saying that the state of Florida itself actually broke a record in the number of visitors in 2017.
And to go with
regardless
your
of-
number, overnight visitors spent 26 billion from
Okay.
September
Billion.
2016 to August
And
2017.
so where are we playing a part in that? So it's
Exactly.
happening whether we're
Yeah.
annoyed with it or not.
Exactly.
Participating or
Somebody's
not.
making money. So
Right.
you're either going to join and make some money. So I know like Overtown has the Josephine Baker,
The
bed
Dunn's
and breakfast.
Josephine,
and
yeah.
stuff like
Josephine
that.
Dunn.
Josephine Dunn, I'm sorry about that. Bed and breakfast. So it's like we have to participate in
Yeah.
these things.
Right.
So can I give
Otherwise-
people some more facts since we're in this? Now
like
that y'all,
it.
Yeah,
go for it.
Brazil is Miami's #1 international market, but it declined by 25%. Then there's Germany, Argentina, Colombia, that makes up pretty much the rest of it. They still have the highest selling rooms, and 5.3 million passengers sailed through the port of Miami between October and September. So my thing is though, I feel there's a distortion of how the culture is perceived here, because normally it's just based around Hispanic, Latinx culture,
Absolutely.
and you're not talking about the rich cultures that come from, as I still call them, the lost cities. Overtown, Liberty City, Delray, Pompano Beach, places like that have a lot of history tying you back to things like Tuskegee University. I really wonder how many kids know why their schools are named Booker T. Washington. And if they actually know that was a black man from Tuskegee University that came down here to expand his educational boundaries and his artistic boundaries with George Washington Carver to actually do they even know why these schools are named what they're named?
So these are opportunities. I think
Absolutely.
those are, like, when you think about what business opportunities are out there. Again, when we started Muse, we did an art exhibition at Jazz in the Gardens. And
Right.
somebody came up and said, can you bring this to my festival? Can you bring this to my school? Can you bring this to my, like, we had like 3 requests in that one day 4 years ago. And we realized, okay, this is a business, you know.
Right.
It started as, you know what, we want to make sure that we're participating in the artscape that's happening in Miami. It's an art revolution. We want to participate in it, and it turned into a business.
Right.
It didn't, you know, we knew it would be a business. We thought it would only be exhibitions, and then people asked for cultural programming. And I know it's one of those things where you go like, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry about
It's
that.
all right.
I'd be like,
That's what happens when you get excited.
I did. I got really
But
excited.
so when we're talking about these transitions and we get into controlling the narrative, I think one way is definitely by, if you own the art, you control the story. Which I definitely think that's why a lot of people are up in arms with Kirsten becoming the curator
For the
at
Brooklyn Museum.
Brooklyn Museum. But then at the same time, get upset about people saying that, but they won't even buy art from an artist. And it's like, oh, you can't paint me a picture? Don't you just want to put something on so I can get... Can't take exposure to a bank. So how do we start controlling the narrative of the arts?
Okay. I'm gonna let her address the art, but I want to address the heritage and the history
Okay.
and the culture in our neighborhoods.
Especially with a lot of content and a lot of media that's out
Oh,
these days.
absolutely. You know, it is so important that we control our own narrative, that we tell our own stories.
Right.
And right now, because Chet has been around for about 1.5 years now.
I thought you guys were older than that.
Yeah, me too.
Well, we want people to think we're older than that.
Very well established. I
That
definitely
says
thought
a
I was
lot.
older, yeah.
That says a lot.
Okay, but we are the only black-owned tour operator that's doing cultural heritage tours in South Florida. Maybe
So that's
Florida.
Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach.
Yes.
Now, the question with that is there anybody else doing cultural tours, though?
Yes.
But we're the only black.
Okay, I just wanted to make
Okay.
sure. So there's other people
Yes,
doing
but-
cultural
Yeah.
tours, but there's only one
they're
black.
the
Okay.
but the folks who are doing it, again, their narrative is different than mine.
Right.
It's definitely different in the way they tell the story.
Okay. But that's okay.
People talk
It's
about
okay.
Prince in 2 different ways. It's all right. I get it.
Exactly. But people will talk about our history depending on their personal perspectives and their
And what they
backgrounds
went
as
through, yeah.
well. Absolutely. Or what they haven't gone through.
Oh, yes.
So we make it a business. Our tour guides are from the neighborhoods that we do the tours in.
So
you know-
they're going to tell the story that most people never got to hear in the first place.
They're going to tell the
They have a
honest
personal
truth
relationship.
because exactly, they grew up, they either worked, lived, or grew up in these neighborhoods.
Right.
And to Ashlee's point, this has created tremendous opportunity for Chat because we're the only ones doing this. We don't want to be, but we are.
And you have a certification program as well, right?
We do. And I was just going to segue into that. So what we're trying to create opportunities for local residents in the neighborhoods where we do tours. So last year we started a cultural heritage tour guide training program specifically to train local folks from the neighborhoods as a way to create some job opportunities, or folks who are looking to supplement their income, or folks who just want to get their foot in the door, whether they're students, because there's so much opportunity in this industry and people of color are not simply taking advantage of it. We want to help people. I don't have a problem teaching somebody how to do what we do. As a matter of fact, we want people to do what we do. That's why we've launched Chat Broward. That's why we have someone launching Chat Palm Beach. And our vision is that over the next 2 years, we're going to be in communities throughout the state of Florida and out of the state. Because even on a national scale, there's no one doing really
That was
focused
going to
on
be my
cultural
next question.
heritage.
How
Right.
many other outside of the states? I wonder how many other just.
There's not a lot of people focused on cultural heritage tours because I've been traveling. Nashville, here we come.
That's right.
Detroit, here we come. Atlanta, here we come.
But how
Really,
do you-
Atlanta.
I'm not saying there isn't anyone.
Okay.
But there's
Doesn't matter.
no
You
one
can be,
really
but how
dominating.
how are you going to instill the value? I get it because I'm an artist,
Mm-hmm.
and I know there's so much stories that can be told through a canvas that you can never hear from somebody's voice.
Right.
But then at the same time, you still have to hear from the voice that the people that lived it.
Well, and that's who's telling our story. Because when I say I can't be in all of these different cities, but we're
It's
going to
localized.
recruit local folks who live in these neighborhoods, who know the history of these neighborhoods.
Because I'm sure people felt that way when they realized a black man made Jack Daniels. It's just certain stories
Yes.
that's not
You're
being
like,
told.
wait a minute.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was
we-
actually going to go to the point about, I didn't mean to cut you off, but to that point about the story of Miami and how that story has changed. No one really knows about a lot of the old Miami and the Bahamian
settlements.
influence
Right.
and everything.
Yeah.
Now everything, like you said, because we touched on it a little bit, but everything right now is so Latinx.
We have the best tour
So-
guide, and when I'm going to invite you guys on our Black Miami
Yay.
tour. We have the
Maybe we
best
should do a
tour
little
guide.
film
Absolutely.
live, yeah.
Yeah, let's do that because, you know, I am going to toot our own horn because, again, we get such great response from people who take our tours because they have never really experienced Miami or really understood the black influence
In Miami.
from the historical perspective all the way up to present day that exists in Miami because, to your point, when I first moved here, I was it was a culture shock because I'm like, wow, we're the minority of the minorities here in Miami. So, you know, we have to have people that can tell the story, and we do. We specifically, work with people who know the history and who are from the neighborhoods. And we're creating those opportunities for people in the neighborhoods to work with us.
So I want to kind of go back to what you just said.
Yeah.
Coupling those things because Stephanie does those tours and we do, like I said, art production and cultural programming.
Right.
So you go back to that history. So we're actually working on a project with NPCA, which is the National Parks Conservation Association.
Okay.
To actually tell the story of Sir Lancelot Jones. How many people know who that is?
I have no idea
right
who is
now.
that.
Okay. So Sir Lancelot Jones and the Jones family actually is a black family that saved Biscayne National Park. It is here, they own the land and they actually sold it to the Park Service. So the reason that you actually have Biscayne National Park is because of this family. And nobody knows this information. Nobody
Yeah.
knows that the Jones family was integral in making sure that that public space became a public land. When we first started this company, we came up with a few things that we wanted to definitely do: our exhibitions. We wanted to have festivals in film, fashion, and outdoor life. Again, those spaces where I feel people with discretionary income or enjoying vacations would love to see those heritage spaces in their parks. And so we said, okay, what will be our outdoor experience? And
Yeah.
it showed up and said, you know what? We're going to make this a fun experience on the Biscayne Bay, at Elliott Key, on these national parks, which will happen in October. But it's one of those things where you go like, now we're able to teach the history in a way that is very fun, very
Exactly.
exciting, very
Inclusive.
very inclusive, very
Right.
touristy. Everyone can enjoy it, and it goes back to what is that history? Is it Latin-esque? I think we can accept that the Latin culture is very much a
Absolutely.
part of
Yeah.
Miami's
Yeah.
involvement, but I think people, like everyone sitting at this table, like our responsibility is to make sure that we tell those stories in a way that everyone can feel included in them.
You know what I
the
think?
whole scope.
A person that did a real good job of that during Black History Month was Keon Hardiman. Every day he was posting a story about
his
different
Instagram.
things on his Instagram page. And I actually learned a lot. I made it a point during that month. I was waking up to read to see what he was posting because a lot of these stories just aren't easily or readily available.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
another thing. It's like it's so hard to find history sometimes.
Well, I think we also holding people accountable to these things. So like those tours, our exhibition pops up shows like this. So I think about the lyric, and it's our archives, So I love the space and all those kind of things. But when you say like that stuff isn't readily available, I just want people to know we do have a Black archives, that I would love to see very, very integral on social media, sharing all this information and making that history very, very accessible.
It's
So
as my friend Thomas K.R. Stovall would say, sometimes it just shouldn't be that hard.
no, exactly.
that's
So,
true.
I mean, we were having this conversation yesterday. Like, how do we, I know, like, I feel like in the culture, we make sure that we always prop each other up in public,
Yeah.
but there are some times that you got to call people out and say, hey, can we
Yes.
make
Behind
sure
the
that this
scenes, what's going
information
on?
is available?
So because this is a technology show, what role do you guys see technology playing in terms of sharing the narrative, supporting the history, and making sure that the information is preserved? Are you using technology?
Well, right now we primarily use technology to book tours, but we
They're definitely digital and social media spaces that we're working from. So people will see us here. Like, we got.
Actually, y'all need to be like, when flash mobs was popping about 3 years ago?
I would love that.
Y'all need to just pop up in random white places and just start dropping Black history stuff. Out of nowhere, just show up and start performing, do a full production on history, and then just leave and just leave like
Break it down.
an address in a box, like ship your money here.
Right.
and just
Spray
walk
paint
out.
some stuff on the floor and be like, out.
Flash history mobs. That's what you should do. Just drop knowledge on people out of nowhere.
And she dances everywhere anyway.
That's true.
That's what I'm saying. You
That
should
I'll be a
works.
performer.
go to Sawgrass and just start dancing in the middle of
Break it
Macy's.
out. Hey.
Everybody's coming, okay?
That's good.
But no, like, those things help. Those social media tools help.
Yeah.
Detroit, we have artists from all over the nation who like come here. So we work with an artist from Colorado just recently through social media connections and
Nice.
digital technology. Are we doing more with technology? We're working to get to that space. But as you guys say, like, it takes those educated in it to
Exactly.
show us how we can definitely use it to evolve. We're looking at doing a furniture kind of household app where people can take our artists and place their, like, as they design
Right.
their artwork, they can place the artwork in places, and if they like it, then they can buy
No, that's
directly from
cool.
our artists.
What role does SoFlo Web Fest though play into Muse, and how does that
So
sort of
South
work
Florida Web
together?
Fest is another, and it's so funny you brought that up. So we actually do film experiences as well. So international films from non-traditional voices. So the places you don't get to see very often. You don't get to see Bollywood films unless you're looking for them. Arab films, African films, African American films from here, Haitian films. You don't get to see those on the mainstream. So South Florida Web Fest happens in conjunction with our Now or Neverland Art Fair. And basically, we have about 50 to 60 shows that actually screen from all over the world. We had one from Israel that won this year, and one from India that was the second place uprunner. I would love to see more Black shows submit, but I find, like, Black people, if it doesn't say Black, sometimes we just don't do it. So I just want to put that out there, that just because it doesn't say the word Black, you are still welcome to
Right. We had that
submit to
conversation last
everything.
week.
I was just thinking, like, why? Like,
Because
Yeah.
we sometimes
if
feel
it's
like a
too
subculture.
black, people are scared to come.
Yeah,
if
and then
it
if you
says,
don't put it,
if it
you know,
doesn't
so-
say black, it's
That
like,
goes
oh,
back to that self
we ain't
love. Gotta love yourself and not be afraid to like be who you are.
You have to own
And be
your
on your
space,
narrative.
own who
Absolutely.
you are all the time. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I know you introduce us as women, then someone can say they're entrepreneurs, or someone can say they're artists, or curators or festival managers. So I think we need to be okay with owning every identity that you have. You are not just Black.
I
You are
will
not
admit,
just that.
That's
So,
the complexity.
only reason why I did say the women part is because
that Me Too.
I think a lot of besides
kidding, I'm kidding.
being bullied on stage before the
Right
show,
before the show
Um,
started.
I think a lot of women don't. A lot of people don't pay attention to how much we actually focus on uplifting women, especially women of color. And so my thing is, as my friend David has said off camera, celebrate yourself if they're not going to celebrate you.
Amen.
So I make a point to celebrate Black women, because if nobody else is going to do it on this platform, I can make sure I'm doing
Get
it.
those
So,
points.
That's
Metro.
right.
I like
Well,
that.
and,
Do that
and to
thing.
your point, if I could, my intention is to disrupt the tourism industry.
I really
You
like what
already
you're
are.
doing. I mean,
You
I think
already are.
I think the formula is dope. Somebody let my little baby in. I think the formula is dope to the point that people aren't paying attention, but you are in a position where you can't just move swift. You gotta move fast, because we ain't big, but we reach about 1,000 people, and it
Yeah.
only takes somebody to be like,
Ooh,
you
good
know what?
idea.
Yes. Well,
Keisha from the side of the hood, she do know all about this block, and the next thing you
Go ahead and
know,
put her on the bus.
she got on a little
Keisha,
chat
call
shirt.
me.
Keisha
Keisha,
got on a
call
little
me.
chat shirt, and she running around.
Right, she
Let
on
me
a
take
bus.
you on the
No
hood
joke.
tour behind the scenes.
We need the Keishas and
Keisha got that first 48 tour.
Right.
Stop it.
On the Segways.
Like, a dead body.
Okay, we do train our tour guides, okay? There is etiquette.
I'm sorry, that was my
Certification
boys in the
at
head.
People want to see it. You're like, wait a minute.
You want to see a dead body?
But what I was saying about disrupting,
Yeah.
it is my personal goal. For the next 5 years, I do want to help 50 women of color become tour operators.
One of the things, actually, are we talking about the aspect of just never mind, I won't do it.
I don't say it. Go.
I got a word.
Let's go. We're gonna go there.
We've had the conversation about when things become too black.
So I think so you go things become too black, right? So I feel like I think if we're all speaking from an authentic space, like you're going to be yourself. So it's either the person experiencing it is going to say it's too black and it's not for them, which is okay, but somebody else is going to come and say, you know what? I really like this experience. I like riding in a dunk.
But I
can't please everybody.
So like I was gonna say,
I just still have never heard somebody go to a Greek restaurant and say it was too Greek.
No, it's so no.
I've never went to
definitely.
a Chinese restaurant, even though they
it's too
speaking in
Chinese.
their language and you don't understand what the hell they saying. I've never heard. This place is just too Chinese. I think I'm gonna go somewhere
Right,
else.
it's suppression of culture, though.
Conditioning. It's
It is a
conditioning
lot of
to
this.
put us,
Absolutely.
to put.
Is it
again,
conditioning or is it a fear of separation and excellence?
Well, I think it's conditioning for sure. So I think we go through school assimilating into another culture all the way
Programming.
through.
Yeah.
Like if I didn't have the African Heritage Cultural Arts Center, I wouldn't know. Like I feel like my confidence and identity comes from that space because we learned Black history that when I talk to people and I realized they weren't learning the same thing that I was learning, if I had only gone through public school training, I would be assimilated in one way. So yes, we go, okay, this is proper. And I go like, this is what it's supposed to be. We're not supposed to use Ebonics. We're not supposed to speak in that way. We're not supposed to do a workout like everyone else can do it, but you can't do it. So well, that's how it goes. It's like you're ghetto and it's cool for someone else to pick it up. So
Right,
I
or
think
you look real
we're
stank.
always trying to get away from being,
Right.
labeled as, yeah, like you said, too Black or too ghetto, because does it devalue your product? Does it, lessen the value? I mean, we look at white flight, we look at gentrification. Yes, people move in, the value goes up. People move out, the value goes down.
Yeah.
There is definitely a conditioning in this country towards lesser value for Blackness.
Yeah,
so I
systemic
think
programming.
that's why people go, yes, is it too Black? But if we decide to honor the spaces that we're in and enjoy the culture as is. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like sometimes others enjoy the culture more. Like we'll present something and my Black people will be like, can't do that. No. And then the others will be like, I love it. Please, when can you bring it? So I think we all have to accept and honor the space and the culture and be okay with it first and not give a shit about what anybody else is thinking about it and allow them to experience it as it is, whatever it is. Now, I also think Black people, we don't have to enjoy a dunk. We don't have to enjoy this. We don't have to enjoy macaroni and cheese. We don't have to be cornered into Blackness because it's so many different identities. You can see that from Afropunk. You can see it from, the muse culture or the chat culture or the digital grass culture. Like I think every Black person should also not be confined by Blackness. There was a hair product company, and I know people may not agree with me on this. They did like they wanted to diversify their demographic.
Shea Moisture.
Yeah,
We talked about them before.
and they put white people on it. And it's like Black people just crucified
Yeah.
them. I'm like, we're the only
We have a
group
tendency
who can't,
that does that.
we can't
Yeah,
diversify our portfolio. iPhone markets to everybody. Why can't we?
Exactly.
So I don't know if everyone feels the same way, but I feel like it goes on both spaces
See,
there.
now, I'm from Detroit, and even I'm from the D, but even the fact sometimes when I would tell people I'm from Detroit, there's automatically this stereotype. I've had a couple men say to me, "Oh, you're a Cutter brother." Seriously,
And you
because
like, wait a
I'm from
minute.
Detroit.
Be like, but Stephanie, will you? Though?
But see,
Right.
Will you though?
Look, you got a razor blade tuck we need to know about?
In all honesty.
But I think that perception, and from like you're saying, you didn't really assimilate into your Black history or heritage until you started working for those institutions. For me, being in Detroit, which is a predominantly Black city, and I went through all the way through high school with nobody but black folks, you know, in my environment. It wasn't until I went to college when I started to, you know, mix with other cultures, and when I started traveling and like, oh my God,
Right.
you know, beyond
Culture
Detroit.
shock.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a culture shock, you know, but again, I think that there are stereotypes that perpetuate, you know, I think expectations that people already come to the table with. Because again, they only see and they only know what they hear. Not that they have had their experience themselves, not that they have interacted with black folks themselves, not that they have gone to a black neighborhood or ate at a black restaurant, but it's what they see sometimes in the media or they
Exactly.
hear from other people that forms those, you know,
Opinions.
stereotypes and opinions. And the one thing I love about what we do is because when somebody goes on our tour, particularly, you know, people who are not black, and when they are like, you know, and I've had people say who are from Miami who have gone to Overtown, and it's like, you know what, I can come back here, I'll come back here and walk by myself, I'll come back here and eat
Right.
at night.
They have a new appreciation.
Exactly, because when, you know, we're walking the neighborhood and the local folks are greeting
Right.
them and saying, hey, what's
You
up?
won't be scared.
Right,
Oh,
Right. It debunks
Just
all the
treating them
stereotypes.
like humans, like they're human
Yeah.
beings, you know. Then it's like, oh wow, I don't have to be afraid to come,
Exactly.
you know. And so that's why I love what we do, and that's why I think what we do is so powerful and impactful, because it can shift and change perspectives and perceptions, and tear down a lot of ignorance that a lot of people come to the table with just because they just don't know and
Yeah.
they haven't had certain experiences.
Completely agree. We ready for quick six?
Yeah.
You want to kick it off?
Sassy number 6.
No, go ahead. You can
No.
do that one. What? You can do the Sterling one.
All right. So, are you guys familiar with the sort of scandal that's going on with the Sterling Broadcast Group? No. All right. So I'll give you a little bit of background, so
Calm
that
it
way you
out.
can answer. So you can answer the question. So Sterling Broadcast Group is like a company that basically owns about 170
The
local
television
stations.
and they made everyone.
And they gave everybody a media package and was like, read this, basically saying that they are against sort of media
fake news. Yeah.
right, and media pushing certain agendas. Meanwhile, they push an agenda, and they're
With
very
like
conservative
300
and
stations, yeah.
right-leaning. So the question is, especially when we're talking about cultural tourism and controlling the narrative, what do you sort of feel the role of media is in your specific areas, and how do you use it?
Wow. And again, it's like everything we're talking about at the summit. Seriously, we're doing a session that's called People, Places, and Perceptions. You know, how do we reshape stereotypes to attract more local folks and tourists into our black neighborhoods, and the role that media plays in influencing people's behaviors and actions, whether they know it or not. But I think the role that media plays in what I do is helping to create a balance, because we don't hear enough about the positive things that are happening in our heritage neighborhoods. You know, the people that are doing positive things, there's not enough balance in the media. We always hear, we know that there is violence and there's killings, you know, that happen, you know, unfortunately, too often. But there's violence on South Beach, too. But that don't stop people from going there.
Okay, hold on. So
Okay.
you should have explained quick
Right,
six to him.
right,
That-
right, right.
You got to have them quick responses. What do we do to uplift black men more? Because I'm tired of only hearing about black men being shot or committing a crime.
So I'm gonna say that I think we need traditions and rituals. So a friend of mine, she just celebrated I don't know what's Passover, you know, which talks about memorializing all of the people that, you know, whatever happened to Jewish people at that time. Please forgive my space there, but I think traditions and rituals with black men, loving black men there. I think black men need sacred spaces. A lot of women have sacred spaces. People like the Brotherhood. Black men should have.
We
men,
did.
period.
It was the strip club, but then they got taken off.
See? You gotta make it more sacred, baby. The woman can't be there to entertain.
That's what I'm saying.
So.
It used to be the strip club, then all kind of women started showing up. Then it was a
That's
cigar lounge, and everybody started smoking cigars.
Right.
So,
Can't go
so
nowhere.
I definitely think traditions and rituals in the culture, very
Nice.
much like Kwanzaa, those things should definitely be entertained and upheld, and also sacred spaces for men, really to have vulnerable conversations about uplifting the culture.
And I think it's about reaching one and teaching one, which I see a lot happening these days, meaning that there are a lot of men that are reaching back to mentor young boys
Right.
in high school. You know, I hear and see a lot of men gathering, you know, to talk about male things that men,
Right.
you know, should be talking about and empowering one another, particularly, you know, in the black community, because there's such an absence of the black fathers in the household. So there has to be more men really stepping up to stand in the gap for those families or the single moms who don't have, you know, the father in the household, so that again we can raise healthier, stronger, you know,
And
productive
I want to
men.
say that I do feel like that's a
I
narrative.
can't let y'all do that. We
Right, I was gonna say, so we're gonna really do the quick six for
We
real,
gotta
for real
get it
now.
back.
narrative, you know?
Yeah. We're gonna rewind on the quick six. So
Yeah.
quick six.
Okay.
You gotta give
We're
like,
figuring it
yeah,
out.
Two sentences. Two
two
sentences.
sentences,
on
real
it.
quick
Okay.
answers. That's
Okay,
why
you
it's called
So
quick
that
six.
was just the closing statements. We'll
Yeah.
make this the quick.
So those were like answers.
Those
to
are
questions.
answers.
Okay.
We'll get into
Yeah.
another round of quick six. So that was
So-
concluding the conversation.
Right, that was conversation.
Go
So
ahead.
quick six for real. Headline in 5 years, what would it be?
That's number one. Go.
Your headline for the city. I made it broad because we've had some different answers in the past, but go.
Tudum-tum.
Oh my gosh.
All right. And so that was Mayor Ashley, by the way. She didn't say it, but that's her head.
Right, that's your headline.
All right.
There we go.
Stephanie, what's yours?
Go ahead, Steph.
Disruptor of the tourism industry.
That's a good one.
Okay.
Probably like Muse
All
International.
right.
Mayor Ashley. Mayor Ashley.
We already got it. All right. The benefits. So we'll go working with your spouses. Yes or no?
Yes. Yes, no, yes.
You know what? Yes.
Right, hubby in the audience. Hubby in the audience.
Totally doable with, expected complications.
Oh, I could say more than just yes.
Nah, not
See.
you. No.
You gave up your time. If you could have dinner with someone dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh, wow. Maya Angelou.
Okay.
Oprah Winfrey. She's still my boo. I love her. Yeah.
I'm always been inspired by
Maya.
Angelou. Yeah.
If you had to pick one album to continuously play at your perfect museum, what would the album be?
Luther.
Really?
Long ago.
Everybody just swooning as they walk through. It's like swaying with it.
Shit. There's this guy, Adekunle Gold. He's a Nigerian performer. I found him teaching class, and I really like his album. So,
If money was no object and you could do anything for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Travel the world.
I'm gonna say what I'm doing right now: performing,
Nice.
producing on a big Broadway stage level.
Is this number 6?
Just go. Number 6. I wasn't counting.
Would you verify that art is the oldest form of cryptocurrency?
Yes, I'm echoing those sentiments for sure.
Okay.
You agree?
Yeah.
The only
I
thing that
agree.
stated, only thing that lasts.
So, this is something for a friend. I have a little closing point. Angel Rich was recently on The Breakfast Club, and some people that know her and they know each other made a comment. And if you guys, y'all might not be aware, but Angel Rich is a young lady that has a website.
Right, we're going to get you on Angel.
It has an app called Credit Stacker. We was trying to get her here today because she was in Miami, but she's been texting me and she's calling me now, but she had to fly back to DC to do DC News. And
Oh, well, that's maybe why she was calling. She's here.
Tell her to come downstairs.
oh yeah,
Come on down, Angel. Hey, Angel.
oh. Did she have big braids? No, she has braids now. Okay.
She's not here.
Yeah. So, anyways, there's a conversation going on about it, and somebody called her out, and somebody else told her, the easiest way to shut down the rumors is to, have the receipts. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it with this for those that didn't take the time to do some of the research, because I haven't watched the whole interview, so I don't know which point she totally touched on. But her app for educational games, the number of countries she was ranked number 1 for her game was 14. The number of countries where she was ranked number 5 was 29. The number of countries where she was ranked 10 was 30. In the top 10 was 33. And the number of countries she was ranked in the top 100 were 78. Some of her number 1 countries included Trinidad, United States, Malawi. Actually, Malawi, I'm sorry, she was number 5. South Africa, Bermuda, and the list goes on. But she was number 1 in a lot of countries for educational games. And the point of me addressing this is, because some of the people I'm talking about, I know them, so there's no need to say their names. If somebody's not moving appropriately in our community and you want to educate them, the best way to show them support is just pull them to the side and guide them on how they can move better. I think Angel just turned 30 years old. And to have that amount of exposure and success at 30, I'm not sure I would have behaved properly either. And I'm not saying she's misbehaving, but sometimes the way you word things can make it come off a different way. But at the end of the day, that is our sister. That's a young black woman still trying to find her way. And she's actually doing something that most people don't care about, that's mainly affecting our community, which is financial literacy. So when somebody's doing something positive in a neighborhood to make a change, if you have something to say, make sure at least the first thing you say is step into that person and tell them how to move better. And at that point, if they don't move the way you think they should move, the best way to honor them is just in silence. We're not going to help each other tearing each other down. And some of these conversations are still going to be had. We're still people. But sometimes on public platforms, some of these things don't need to be said. If you really don't have a positive, I catch myself. And it's just like, remember Michael from Occubot told us when responding to a client, the moment you're about to send that client an angry email, put it as a draft, read it in the morning, and delete it.
I do that all the time.
Then rewrite the email and make sure you're addressing the actual issues and not addressing your emotions.
And smile.
Treat Facebook, Instagram, and I've been bad. I people know me. First of all, I'll debate just to debate. I'll start an argument just to have a good argument because I like intellectual stimulation. But if I'm actually attacking someone, it has, or I know it's just totally negative and I don't have any way to help them improve, it's best for me to just not say anything because I'm not adding anything to the situation. A negative comment denotes itself the same way it would in mathematics. Once it's negative, it's taken away from a positive situation. So I just want to say on that note, stay positive, keep love, black love. Let's keep it going. All right, guys. Thanks for coming out tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.